In this video, we're going to explore what's happening in your hips and pelvis could possibly be contributing to some forward head posture. Now, as the song says, the whole body is connected, right? So we can kind of think underneath it all, what happens to our body and how to react to a pelvis that's in an anterior pelvic tilt. Now, as I'm in this anterior pelvic tilt, this positions my hips over my feet. I can either kind of succumb there, let everything flare, arch back using my paraspinals and holding there. Or I can respond with some toe gripping, calf gripping, glute gripping. But when it comes to the forward head posture, what might happen is we're here, everything's kind of spilling forward, and then we might counterbalance by gripping in our upper abs, pulling our ribs back, gripping in our chest, or both of those. And then that can contribute to this kind of sway back posture of a little bit more excessive kyphosis in this thoracic spine. And then our head and neck is left forward here. So we can do all the chin tuck heads lift that we want, even working on trying to open up that chest. But we might need to address what's happening in that pelvis first to help set the rest of the kinetic chain up for success. So thinking with being in an anterior pelvic tilt, that pelvis is going to be tipped more forward like this in space. That is going to overly lengthen the hamstrings because the hamstrings attach at the at the ischial tuberosity here. The proximal hamstrings insert at the ischial tuberosity here and then crosses down the back side of the knee. So we can think about how if I'm in an anterior pelvic tilt, that proximal hamstring is lengthened. So I need to do some work to find that proximal hamstring to pull me back and root me back down. Now, if I've done that with glute clenching, now I might need to do some work where I'm unsticking the sacrum here first, finding that proximal hamstring while opening up the backs of those hips, or doing a little bit more glute eccentric work first before finding those proximal hamstrings. You might also need to find a little bit of lower abs to help pull you back, making sure that you can, again, find those lower abs without the glutes clenching. We can work on finding those lower abs without dropping that chest down. And then, yes, we can work on some chest opening, some eccentric pec work, making sure we're finding that pec major first, and then feeling ourselves eccentrically lengthen, that shoulder blade sliding back and chest opening, which is gonna help kind of close that kyphosis, right? So we think about that kyphosis as all the tissue back here being overly lengthened. Now, by getting those shoulder blades to be able to slide back from that chest wall opening, now we're kind of bringing more balance to the system. We then can work on some concentric work of those middle and lower traps. But if you're trying to do that first from that lengthened position, that's going to be tricky. Now, as we're working on unsticking that scapula and being able to have it pull back and come forward, we might also need to work on this idea of having it not go with the ribs, right? So as we're pulling back, can those ribs stay like they are, or do we want to flare forward? As we press and reach, can the ribs stay like they are, or do they tend to drop down? So working on unsticking those parts from each other, making sure that we're not, faking the movement of pulling back and then jutting that head forward, but staying nice and long through that head and neck and getting the scapula to move independently from the rib cage and the neck. Then yes, we might have those weakened and lengthened deep cervical flexors and tight extensors in the backside, so we might need to do some work up here in the neck to help us get everything back as one unit. Thinking with all this work, we're just trying to think about, okay, I'm positioned in this one extreme of range of motion. I need to then train the opposite range of motion so that I can rest more easily in the middle. It's not like we want to work on the forward head posture by just hammering it back here and staying here all the time. We're just thinking about how we can use those exercises to give us the tools to then just be able to rest and stand there more naturally, nice and tall, everything feeling connected, but also being able to be nice and fluid. So just a little food for thought for you for thinking about, particularly if you've been addressing some forward head posture, maybe at least getting beyond the neck, getting into the chest and shoulders here with it and that rib cage. And then, okay, next step of what is happening in our hips and pelvis to also help contribute to that readjustment to our body. P.S. Don't forget to check out some of these exercise videos that we have on our channel that talk you through some of the exercises that I talk about and concepts that I talk about in this video to work on forward head posture.